Great training session out there. I know it's been a while since we've been able to practice in person. How is everybody feeling so far?
Great, coach.
Great.
It's awesome to be back practicing on the real field again. Virtual practices are great and all, but I couldn't show off my awesome moves.
Oh, well, I'm really glad that you're feeling so good because our next drill is going to whip you into shape pretty quickly. So let's get on the sideline and do some wind sprints.
Aw, coach, come on. Do we have to? It's not like we're training for anything. There's no competition.
There is, Jared. I just received an email from Special Olympics Ontario. They're allowing competitions again. I have signed us up for a hometown games later this summer.
Really, coach? You just made my day. I can't wait to show off my skills again. Will Stratford be there? I miss my friend Charlie.
Oh, you never know. Hopefully they will be. And I'm happy to hear how excited you are. The new hometown games are being planned every single week throughout the summer, and I'll be sure to keep an eye out for more opportunities for the team.
Thanks, coach. But quit your blabbing. It's time to get to work. I've got a hometown games to win.
Nice. Let's do it.
All right. Hello, everyone. I hope you are enjoying our amazing acting skills. And welcome to our presentation for the 2022 Volunteer Conference. As you can surmise, it is going to be revolving around the hometown games concept. Let's give us a second here as we get out of our fancy presenting mode and get into our meeting mode. Going to share my screen. All right. Up and running now. Everyone can see the presentation going. Thumbs up. Awesome.
Yeah.
Perfect. So I recognized most of the people who registered, but for anybody who does not know me, my name is Jared Copeland, and I'm the manager of sport and competition with Special Olympics Ontario. And with me today, I have Julie Prokopchuk-Bratton, who is currently our return to competition coordinator. So together, we're very excited to walk you through our hometown games concept and the return to competition platform that Special Olympics Ontario has created. However, before we begin, we'd just like to acknowledge that though we are meeting virtually, we are all on land that's been inhabited by Indigenous people for thousands of years. In particular, we acknowledge that the Special Olympics Ontario office is located on the traditional land of the Huron-Wendat, the Haudenosaunee, and most recently, the Mississaugas of the Credit First Nations. This land is governed by the Dish with One Spoon Covenant between the Haudenosaunee Confederacy and the Confederacy of Ojibwe and Allied Nations. Today, this meeting place is still the home to many Indigenous people from across Turtle Island, and we are grateful to have the opportunity to work, live, and play on this land. In addition, I'd like to acknowledge that I'm giving this presentation from Sudbury, Ontario, which is the traditional territory of the Tikamitching Anishinaabe First Nation. Oh, going backwards. So to kick off the conference, I would like to play a quick little video for everyone. This is the Hometown Games promo video that I'm sure many of you have seen. But if you haven't, this was put together by our friends at Universus Media. And hopefully this sets the stage and gets us excited for our return to program once again.
Competition matters. But it's not about the podium. It's about the devotion, the emotion. It's about the trying and the defying. Special Olympics Ontario is coming back strong with a new style of competition, Hometown Games. We are supporting our communities across Ontario by giving them new
right. I guess admitting people stops the video. Let me get us back on track here.
Across Ontario by giving them
Maybe
the
we can
tools
admit
to
them
hold
when we
their
see
own
them.
local games. Together, we will reignite local competitions, scaled and tailored for the athletes in each community. Hometown games are perfectly aligned with our movement's emphasis on the development of the athlete, promotion of health, the growth of athlete leadership, and unified programs. Our athletes and coaches are getting ready, but we'll need more volunteers than ever in every community that's holding a hometown games event. And we'll need continued support from our sponsor. Town Games event. And we'll need continued support from our sponsors for our reimagined Special Olympics movement. Everyone loves a comeback story. Let's embrace and celebrate a new form of games, hometown games.
Right. So I see we already have a hand up from Laura. You there, Laura, or was that an accident? All right. Accident. All right, perfect. Thank you, Laura. So many of you have probably heard of Hometown Games, but it is fairly new in the process. And we had our first events last weekend, but we're always looking to encourage more events and get more people involved. So we thought we would take the opportunity from these Hometown Games, or from the volunteer conference, to spread a little bit more of the message of Hometown Games and what it's all about. So the question we keep on getting is, what is Hometown Games? How is this different from general competition? And Hometown Games is going to be many things, and we anticipate that it will grow and evolve as we move through the process and continue to reignite competition coming out of the COVID-19 pandemic. At its most basic concept, Hometown Games will serve as Special Olympics Ontario's return to in-person competition pathway. We are committed to this framework for the next year, using it as the launching point back to traditional competition mechanisms. It has been organized by not just SO staff, but also by a Hometown Games Advisory Committee made up of members from across Ontario. We wanted to ensure that our thinking and our philosophies were going to be felt the same way on the ground, and to make sure that it fit the current landscapes being seen in our local communities. Hometown Games will take on various shapes, and we recognize that communities and all of our members have been affected differently by the pandemic over the last 2 years. A tailor-made single approach strategy was not going to fit and was not going to be appropriate moving forward. So we had to make sure that we had something that was flexible and malleable, that was going to be allowed to take its shape differently in each and every community. SOO fully recognizes that Hometown Games may not immediately jump back to the large-scale competitions we used to know. This is both by design and by the very nature of our current landscape. We recognize that some of these competitions may have to start off small, and that's okay. Not everyone's going to be prepared to jump back into competition the way we used to. You know, for the last 2 years, we've been telling people, stay away from people, social distance, don't get together. So if the first event back is a 150-person track meet, this is going to pose some obstacles, and isn't necessarily where we want to go with the organization and with the movement. But you know, maybe some people are ready for that, so we don't want to curtail that excitement and that enthusiasm either. We recognize that by starting small, we're allowing athletes and clubs to build back their fitness. So perhaps a smaller tournament, rather than a 4 or 5 game round robin softball tournament playing 7 innings, we're going to play 2 or 3 games of 50 minutes, right? Our athletes haven't been as active, they haven't been as involved for the last 2 years, and perhaps they need that different approach, those different tailored rules to allow them to succeed right now. We also know that by starting small, we allow our organizations to recover. We've lost a lot of volunteers. We know that some volunteers are hesitant to come back. So by starting small, we allow communities to maximize the volunteers that they do have and not put undue pressure on the volunteers that are committed to hosting these Hometown Games for us. We know that by starting small, we're going to gradually build ourselves back up to those larger scale events. And that's where we want to be. We want to make sure that we're building that comfort level. So maybe to start with, it's a 50-person track meet, and then it's a 75-person track meet, and then it's the 100-person plus track meet. So we know that this is going to grow as we go forward. And maybe even by the end of the summer, we'll see some of those traditional competitions back and in full force, maybe even sooner. But we don't want to put timeframes on it. We don't want to put, expectations on them. We want this to really meet the needs that we're seeing in these communities. We also know that each individual club has been affected differently, and we don't want to limit creativity for these competitions. Our soccer program might only have 8 athletes that are coming back or that are comfortable with competitions right now. Does a 7-a-side traditional soccer competition make sense for those athletes? Or does a 5-on-5 or a unified competition make more sense in order to fit into the current dynamics we have within our communities and within individual clubs? So hometown games will take on all these various shapes to meet our athletes and our clubs and our communities where they need to be. So as we progress, we hope that hometown games can unify our athletes and our volunteers in a common vision. We recognize that hometown games could be a mechanism for volunteer engagement, retention, and recruitment. We hope that it can serve as a way to unify our communities, reconnecting SOL programs with their sponsors, with their media, and their other community partners that we haven't had the same opportunities to engage with over the past 2 years. And most of all, we hope that hometown games is going to be a mechanism for fun, right? That's the number one priority. That's why everyone's involved in sport. We want to make sure that these are fun and engaging events for all of our athletes, all of our volunteers. And if we can't make them fun, why are we here? We fully anticipate that what occurs in Tillsonburg might not be the same as what happens in Barrie or in Thunder Bay or even in their neighbors down the highway in Woodstock. And that's okay. We know that that's going to be our starting place, but together we can move forward at our own comfort levels to try and rebuild and reignite our programs. Who can participate in hometown games events? We mentioned that hometown games is going to be flexible, and this is going to be the same thing with our athletes and who can participate. So anyone who is registered with Special Olympics Ontario can participate in hometown games. We encourage that adaptive events are being offered in competitions where possible. And of course, our hometown games would be happy to work with you to make sure that these events are being inclusive in all opportunities. So if you have any sort of unique circumstances within your community, we want to hear about that. We want to work with you to make sure that this is going to happen. Unified events are also a great way back to competition. These events could pair Special Olympics athletes with community members participating and playing as a collective team. This could be a great way to supplement athlete numbers and create hyper-local engagement events. Imagine a Battle of the Banks bocce tournament for all the local bragging rights. How can we engage these local partners into these events and create, again, that community atmosphere within our communities? That's what hometown games is all about. The pandemic has had such a huge impact on all of our communities, and what better way to regain that sense of unity? Yeah, hometown games will be all about rebuilding these connections, not only within our Special Olympics community, but our general communities as well. Who are running hometown games? Another one that we're getting quite frequently. Hometown games is going to be a multifaceted approach. As always, our community volunteer groups from across Ontario are going to be instrumental in offering our programming and offering all the great things that come with competition. But we're also going to be running hometown games in schools. So local schools and local school boards, their return to competition will also be under the hometown games banner. Again, creating that one unifying vision for all Special Olympics athletes, regardless of where they're registered or where they're participating. We're also getting a lot of interest from partners. They're looking to re-engage as well. They're coming out of the COVID pandemic and looking for ways to create, everyone's been working from virtual offices, everyone's been away from the standard operating, and they want to create those team building events again. They want to reconnect with their local community. And what better way than by hosting or assisting with hometown games? And in select cases, especially in key development categories, Special Olympics Ontario will take a lead in organizing and welcoming programs to hometown games events. So this is going to come from all different angles and all different elements. So anytime you hear of people who might be looking to do something, please connect them with us. We'd be happy to hear what they have to say and what they might be willing to do. Probably one of the most important things is all about how Special Olympics Ontario is going to be supporting hometown games. And as we talked about, that our competitions need to be flexible and malleable based on our community's need, so does our community support. So the support that Rob is going to get in Thunder Bay may look a lot different than what Mary's going to get in York South, because their capacity and their skills to offer these competitions might be quite different. Oops. I am sorry, technology. So some events may feel they have great sport volunteers who can run everything on the ground the day of, but they feel they need a little bit more help on the administrative side, getting the registration in order, promoting the event, creating the press releases, going to local media, helping with scheduling, booking venues, things of that nature that might be different. People might not have done that in the past. And there's new people who are taking this on, which we fully anticipate happening. As new volunteers are coming on board, as new communities are looking to host games to reignite their own communities, we understand that not everyone will have hosted games before and need to be able to provide that support. On the flip side, some groups might say, hey, I can take care of all of this administrative work, right? I'm great at that, but I don't know bocce. But I want my athletes to be able to have this experience. I think this would be a great experience in our community. Well, we can then jump in and help with that. So whether it's GMS, helping with divisioning, figuring out your awards, even having a body on site to kind of be the event lead, we can help with that. And we've also wanted to create sort of a unified excitement across all of our hometown games events. And we've taken the initiative to source medals for our hometown games. So all hometown games will be receiving gold, silver, and bronze medals to award to athletes, participating athletes. And all athletes will also be receiving a participant gift, which is a bandana or handkerchief, depending on how big your head is, that will be allocated to all of those athletes as well for participating. We're also creating custom hometown games participation ribbons. Again, how can we create this excitement? How can we create that urge for competition and realize that instill in our athletes, again, that competition is important and that it truly does matter. And then finally, we understand that all of our communities have been affected financially by this as well. Past sponsors and donors, might not have had the same access to revenue over the past 2 years. We haven't had the opportunity to fundraise. So we know that we need to be there to provide some financial support, and we're doing that through Hometown Games grants. And there's 3 key categories of those grants. Hometown Games host grants. So every community or every partnership who puts up their hand to host a hometown game will receive a Hometown Games host grant. Now, the dollar figure there will depend on what the scope of the competition is. Right? A 2-team soccer event that's taking place on a Wednesday evening wouldn't have the same complexity and the same volunteer numbers needed within a community as a 2-day 25-team softball tournament that's engaging multiple communities in co-partnerships. So we'll look at those and the impact that they're having, the size and scale based on the sport. We know that a 50-person bowling tournament isn't the same as a 50-person rhythmic gymnastics tournament, which isn't the same as a 50-person speed skating event. They all have their own complexities and their own differences, and we'll look at that on a case-by-case basis. But every community who puts up their hand to host the hometown games will receive a grant from Special Olympics Ontario. Again, this has nothing to do with your budget or with helping the books balance. This is a recognition payment, a thank you for helping reignite that competition experience, for helping to re-engage our athletes, and to provide a little bonus perk to your communities as you look to do your own things in your community to re-engage these athletes coming out of the pandemic. The Hometown Games competition support grants are going to look more like the previous competition support grants. We know that if we're sitting at a 4-team softball tournament or a 20-person golf tournament, the revenue might not match the cost of these events. We want to make sure that we're there to support that as well. So depending on the scope and scale, we'll work with you to ensure that all reasonable costs are offset and that there's no cost to your community. And then finally, we recognize that while there's going to be a lot of costs and burden on hosts, that there's also going to be some costs associated with attending these hometown games for a number of communities, especially our more rural communities that might not have the same opportunities locally. So for those communities in need that need additional support to get to hometown games, we want to be there as well. these aren't going to be the same complex. We don't want to add more work to our volunteers' plate. These are going to be a more simplified process, more one-on-one conversations to help determine how we can best support, whether it's administrative, competition, or financial. We want to make sure that this is as pain-free as possible, and encouraging our hosts to put up their hands multiple times, because we know that the key to getting our athletes excited, the key to rebuilding, is going to come through competition. Being able to get on the field and practice is one thing, but being able to see the athletes from other communities, being able to feel the adrenaline of a competition is what's going to continue to build the movement moving forward. So those are our fancy hometown games medals, our hometown games handkerchiefs, bandanas, whatever you feel the best use for them is. And the other thing I did want to mention is that Special Ontario has created a platform for every hometown games to also have a website. This can be simple if you're not interested in promoting it. We can put something simple up there, time, date, place, what it looks like. But if you want to advertise specific positions, if you want to advertise local sponsors, if you want to, create a sort of a welcome video to add some more local flair to your own community, this can all go up on your website as well. So lots of different avenues we're trying to help promote it. We think this can be a great launching point to come back from the pandemic, and I think we're going to try and be as flexible as possible and as accommodating as possible to make sure that everyone has the opportunity to attend these games, whether you're an athlete or you're a volunteer. Which leads to, how do I host a hometown game? So I've got you excited, I've got you interested. Hopefully that's been the case. So we suggest that you sit down with your community councils and determine what's the best fit for your community, what's the best fit for your athletes. What kind of timing are you looking for? If you've been returned to program in the summer for the past 2 years, maybe you're more keen, you're more eager to get back to a full-scale competition. If you're just starting up this summer, you might feel you need more time, so you might have smaller scale competition to start with. So have those discussions with your community council, have those discussions with your athletes, see what the comfort level is like, and then come back to us, and you can apply for to host the hometown games at sohometowngames.com. And we will make sure that we connect with you and figure out a pathway moving forward and to determine your individual support needs. So any further questions on hometown games, looking for more information, you forget what I talked about, 3 days from now when you go back and you want to talk to your athletes about it, SO Hometown Games is where you can go. You can see all the various websites that have already been populated. You can see some of the things that we're doing. That's also where you can find that great promotional video. So lots of great things on that Hometown Games website. We'll continue to populate it and grow that as we move forward. And now I'm going to turn it over to my esteemed colleague, Julie, to talk about some of our return to competition safety protocols.
Thank you so much, Jared. So let's move on to the next slide and welcome everybody. So as we are moving into our hometown games competitions, we do have to consider the safety precautions that are going to be in place because we know that COVID is still going to be with us a little bit longer. So, but we do know that we don't need to necessarily do all the same protocols as we have had to in the last 2 years. So any hometown games that are hosting or any competitions being hosted before May 1st will have to follow the current RTP protocols that are in effect, and which include vaccine declarations, masks, etc. for indoor programs. After May 1st, so that's literally in 4 days on Sunday, we are exiting from our RTP formal protocols and moving into our infection prevention and control measures, IPCM is the new acronym. So as of Sunday, Special Olympics will no longer be requiring the return to program application process. We're no longer going to require the vaccine declarations. No more attendance or attestations to be required. The COVID screening at the beginning of every session is no longer required, and the COVID declarations will no longer be required. However, I know you have all of this information kept safe from your program, so please do keep them for at least a year for sure. Again, just normal protocols with regards to documents because these are legal documents. So keep them for a little while longer. Moving on to the next slide. The next thing that will happen is after May 1st, we know that some local health units and some individual municipalities may have COVID protocols still in effect. So our programs will be required to follow those as needed. And specifically, sometimes the individual facilities will have COVID protocols still in effect. So you do have to still follow those. But Special Olympics, as of Sunday, Special Olympics will no longer require face coverings for any Special Olympics programs. So now individual communities may choose to continue to use face coverings for indoor programs, and that is perfectly acceptable. We totally understand if you feel that it's more comfortable to do that. And we know there's only a few indoor programs still running, so we are leaving that decision up to the individual communities as of Sunday. Next slide, please. So now, one day, Ontario will own the podium at National Games once again. So I just had to do this little shout out to our 5-pin bowling teams that swept the podium in Thunder Bay. So, infection prevention and control measures. First of all, we got to talk about the viral offense. So we have to understand, and this is what will be explained on the website starting on May 1st. All of this information will be posted in far greater detail, but essentially understanding how viruses are spread. So we're going to have that information available for everybody. And believe it or not, there's a lot of ways and more than you can imagine how viruses are actually spread. So knowing that information is really, really critical to ensure that we do not spread viruses. And we're not only talking COVID, we're talking like the flu viruses or cold viruses or anything like that is contagious. Now, the best defense is a good offense. So we will continue to promote the benefits of immunizations, so the COVID immunizations, flu vaccines, et cetera. And the biggest message that we can tell our participants is to stay home if you are sick, because we know that, and I'm sure we've all been in that situation where we've had a cold and we said, oh, I'll just go to training because it'll make me feel better or so forth. So don't. Nobody needs those germs. So stay home. Wash your hands frequently. That will be one of the biggest messages that we'll be relaying. And we do actually have recommendations or statements where we say wash your hands before training, wash your hands after training, wash your hands before competition, after competition, wash your hands frequently. Same thing with the covering the coughs and sneezes effectively. We do have information on how to do that so that it kind of re-engages our athletes into proper ways of preventing any germs to be spreading. And another thing that we need to take into consideration, and we've been doing this over the last 2 years, is sanitizing our sports equipment frequently. And that's something that wasn't done beforehand. But now that we know that viruses are easily spread, we need to start doing that more frequently. So again, before and after training sessions and before and after competitions, we need to start really working, ensuring that our sports equipment is clean. Now, the other thing that the IPCM information will provide is the home team advantage. And this will be practical tips to keep your home safe. And so that will be also include cleaning tips for around the house, proper food waste disposal, and also proper food preparation, because as we know that, there are a lot of things that can happen in food preparation that can cause people to get very sick. So we don't want anybody sick. We want everybody happy and healthy. And we want to make sure that, we can give them as much information as possible to keep them that way. And we're done. So do we have any questions about the hometown games or the return to competition or infection prevention control measures from the group? We're opening it up for questions now. We are silent. Oh, there we go. Thank you very much. Go ahead, Lenny.
Hi, folks. I've already booked a day in August for our annual softball tournament, and we did that because the town asked us is trying to plan ahead. We did tell them we might not hold it, but now I'm feeling more confident, and I'm wondering if we could parlay that into a hometown games. And should I just go to the website and fill out the application? As Jared mentioned, there's an application process.
Absolutely. The application isn't really an application. We're not going to turn down the hometown games. It's just to make sure that we know that you're interested, we know what you're looking to do, and we can make sure that we provide that proper support. So if you are interested, again, any games can be a hometown games, or you can choose for it not to be a hometown games. That's totally up to you. So if you are interested in making it hometown games and taking advantage of some of those supports that are offered for the hometown games program, then absolutely. That's exactly what we'd like to see.
Okay, great.
Please
Thank
do.
you.
And Dave has a question now.
Yeah, Julie, just on the new guidelines, IPCF or whatever we're calling them. So as of May 1st, all the COVID questioning and everything goes out the window. We just had, just a few days ago, noticed on social media that one of our athletes had a fever of 103 degrees. So if we know that in advance, can we prevent that athlete from participating? Because to me, with COVID still out there, that's a dangerous situation.
So,
But we're not required to ask questions.
nope. But as a so a fever indicates illness, and illness means that you should stay home. So
Yeah, but we say they should stay home, but
Yeah.
how do we make them stay home if they showed up? And we know that they likely have COVID, but they're saying that they're not sick.
I know. So funny because I mean, we've all been in that situation. We go, oh no, we're fine. But we can't prevent them from stay home or prevent them from attending. But you know what? We're going to, masks are always a welcome advantage to preventing the spread of virus. So, if they're adamant about coming to training session, then say, listen, if you are, if you say you're not sick, then we strongly recommend you wear a mask because, just in case you are sick. And then that way they can maybe still participate, because by all means, like, masks are still a good defense, and still, your option to encourage your participants to wear them to help prevent the spread of viruses.
Well, I guess my question is, like, how far can we go? Like, to me, if they showed up to my sport, I wouldn't want them there, because by turning that athlete away, I'm potentially I am looking after the health of a lot of other people and preventing them from likely getting sick.
I know.
But I'm not really allowed to do that.
No, I mean, I know it's really hard. It's a really hard situation to be in, and we really need to. That's why education is really the critical point right now, is to make sure that our athletes do understand that it's not worth it. Like, they won't be penalized by any means if they have to miss a practice because they're sick, or perhaps you can recommend that they join virtually. Maybe you say, listen, like, we will still, maybe we'll do a FaceTime with you while we're at training sessions, so you can still enjoy the benefits of the socialization aspect of it. But it's really part of the education factor right now is helping everybody understand. And I know how eager they are to get back, but it's really important that they stay away if they are sick. And that's been the message over the last 2 years. So that message still takes place moving forward after May 1st.
Yeah, so there's basically no way to stop them from coming.
No way to force them to.
Last question is, we cannot require proof of vaccination either on our own, right?
No, vaccinations are definitely not on the table anymore. The only thing that we do give the communities the right to is the face coverings for, and I mean, we would say for indoor programs for sure, if they are interested in doing that.
As a community, we can't take that on ourselves, right?
Not the vaccinations, no.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Great, thanks. Great questions, Dave. Darlene, you're next.
Hi, Julie and Jared. Just a few questions. First of all, in regard to vaccinations, so an unvaccinated coach can come and coach then, just to clarify. Okay.
Correct.
All right. Correct.
After May 1st. After May 1st.
After May 1st. Okay.
Yes.
All right. And then secondly, with the hometown games, we've already had to book ours in Burlington for next January and February. They're all done. Could that be the hometown games be under the umbrella and then use that as a provincial qualifier? Or are they two separate entities?
We aren't there yet, Darlene. So in terms of provincial qualifiers, there's going to have to be some sort of qualifying mechanism next year or next winter for our winter sports, but we're not at a point where we can really discuss those plans because we don't know what they are. We have to wait and see where we're at, what the communities are feeling like, how the hometown games launch is going, what the comfort level everyone is. So moving forward, if we know that those are on the docket and we need hosts, we might look to those hosts, but we aren't in the position to start planning those qualifiers quite yet. The idea of hometown games isn't that they're qualifying events. It's simply right now a return to competition mechanism. But as we move forward, we'll consider revising that in the winter.
Okay, because hometown games for us would be on a smaller scale, but I have to book gyms already. So would it be prudent to say that I should just book all the gyms, and then if it is a qualifier, we can pull back on the gym usage then?
If that's the easiest way for your community, if it's easy to pull back and there's no penalties for booking those, and you wouldn't be penalized the next time you went to book for canceling facilities, then absolutely.
Okay. All right. Super. Thank you.
No problem.
And Rob Saunders, you're next.
Yeah, just a quick question in regards to the hometown games. Because we're getting ready for our track and to hosting a track meet. Is there a limit to numbers on how many can participate?
We're not putting a cap on it. Honestly, with the events that we've seen so far, we're seeing that kind of take place organically. The number of athletes coming and interested in coming haven't been as high as we might have seen 2 years ago pre-pandemic. So things have just sort of naturally been to a smaller scale. But of course, something like track and field, it's still fairly easy to keep your distance and to you're outside as opposed to indoors. So perhaps that will create a little bit better sense of security. And if that's what those communities need and that's what your community is comfortable with, then of course we don't want to take away the experience from those athletes either, while recognizing that some athletes might not be ready for a large scale event either.
Okay, good. Thank you.
Rob. Nicole, you're up next.
Hi. I probably have a little bit more of a unique question, just given the format of our sport. But just touching on the vaccine comment, if we skate within a club that is going to continue a vaccine mandate, or if our PSO decides to continue with their vaccine mandate, does that create a problem with Special Olympics? Because you're saying we can't, even at a community level, put that into place. But if we are ingrained within mainstream clubs that are requiring it, is that going to create a problem?
That's a really great question. Thank you very much for bringing it up, because the one element that has always been slightly different in our RTP process and continues to be is our partner programs. So speed skating and figure skating programs are and equestrian, and we've got a few other sports that are actually partner programs. So you are actually a generic sport program with a Special Olympics component in it. And in that case, your Speed Skating Ontario would be governing your program guidelines. So if Speed Skating Ontario continues with the vaccine declaration or the vaccine requirement for your programs, that will be in place for your program for the Special Olympics component as well.
Okay, and even if it's not the PSO and just the local club, it's still going to sort of follow the same rule?
Yeah, because again, if that club, again, partner programs always fall under the generic sport or the PSO or the club guidelines of that particular sport, yes.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. That's a great question. Thank you very much. And Lenny, you're up again. Nice.
Yeah, just following up on Nicole's comments, I think I'd like to say that it probably would be easiest for us to do what we did during the return to program protocols, and that is follow whichever rules are the strictest, be they the clubs, the communities, the governments, or SOOs. I think certainly in our area, that's going to be easiest. And I'd like to suggest that that's what everybody should be doing. Because then you're within the limits of whatever area you are. And because you do, when you went over the information, it said, well, if your community is still doing this, then you should be doing that, or you should be doing this. Do you follow me? Am I making sense?
Yes, yes.
Just,
So
okay.
although Special Olympics Ontario is not requiring vaccine declarations, the facility in Barrie, the Barrie 10-pin bowling facility, may decide that vaccines are required to participate in programs within that facility, and that's what you'll have to follow, right? So yes, you'll always have to follow what the facility or the community guidelines or the health unit guidelines are for your specific area. And again, if your community council decides that all indoor programs are going to continue to use masks, then that will be one of the protocols that will remain in place as well. So, but yes, it's going to be really tricky to follow that because 10-pin bowling might have vaccine requirements here, but down the road, the swimming facility might still require, you stay 10 feet apart or something like that. It's going to be program specific, community specific, health district specific. So it's going to be challenging for sure. And yeah, definitely have to pay attention to what's going on around your local community. Good. I don't see any more questions for us, Jared. Oh,
one more. Fiona.
So close. Go ahead, Fiona.
Hi.
From her
Thank
car,
you.
by the
That's
looks
my
of it.
Well, I have two questions really. The first is about the upcoming hometown games. Jared had mentioned that the ones that were just this past weekend, they're on the website, the two bowling sessions. Are there any in the pipeline? Maybe they're not on the website yet, but you've got plans lined up for the summer?
Yes, we've definitely heard a lot of feedback from communities. There's a lot of hometown games that are coming down the pipe. We're maybe waiting on a final contract from a facility, waiting on a final date, whatever things of those may be. Or we just haven't had a chance to put them up on the website. The hometown games for the next month are up on the website. Hey, if someone puts up their hand tomorrow and says I want to host something in 2 weeks, we're not gonna stop them, but we're anticipating that those hometown games for the next month are up on the website, and then the other ones will be slowly added as we move forward.
Okay, so if there's something out, out east in Durham, will people out west be able to participate, or are there geographical boundaries?
No geographical boundaries, but each hometown games will be their own distinct event. So there could be an event in, I don't know, Barrie, who always invites Newmarket and Huronia, and that's what they feel comfortable with at this point. So SOO is not going to be enforcing any sort of boundaries on it. You free travel as you will, but each individual competition obviously has the right to restrict or restrict their attendees as needed.
I see. Okay. And my second question is picking up on what Darlene mentioned with regards to the provincial games. So I've been following the other provinces just to see where they're at. And it seems that for the winter qualifiers, they've New Brunswick, BC, Alberta, Saskatchewan, they've all already held their qualifiers. And next year, so 2023, they'll be having their provincial games. So because we haven't heard anything from Ontario, does it mean that Ontario is not going to be participating at all this round?
Ontario at this point, obviously, like the COVID pandemic is always evolving, but at this point, Ontario is committed to attending those games. Unfortunately, with the way the COVID situation was in Ontario versus how it was in BC or New Brunswick, we weren't able to run those qualifying events this winter. As I mentioned to Darlene, there will be a plan in place, but we need a little bit more information first to see where this is headed and what the comfort levels are, and that will take a different shape what speed skating qualifying looks like might be something totally different than what 5-pin bowling looks like, which might be something totally different than what curling looks like. So once we have a little bit more information on comfort level of athletes, what the return to program is going to look like across the province, especially now that some of those mandates have been removed, we'll have a better idea of what we can do in terms of that qualifying process. And once we have that information, we'll make sure that's disseminated out to everybody.
Great. Thank you very much, Jared. I'm just
problem.
glad that we're not going to be, withdrawing from the whole round this time.
Not our intention at all. We know how much games mean to a number of our athletes, and we definitely want that. And we want the qualifiers as well, right? Those are great events that everyone looks forward to. So again, what that's going to look like, it's not going to be your traditional provincial games, but maybe it's sport championships, maybe it's regional events that qualify directly to national games. There's lots of different ideas on the table, and it's gonna, we don't even know how many floor hockey teams, for example, we're gonna have, right? Peroni had 2 teams coming out. Do they get more athletes and have 3? Do they have, half a team and have to merge with Barrie? We don't have that information yet, and I don't think even if we ask the teams, they would necessarily know until we get a little bit further down the road.
Okay, great. Thank you very much.
No problem.
Anders, you're up next.
Yeah, Julie, this question's for you. With the restrictions being lifted, I know at one point Special Olympics had a no-touch rule. Has that been also lifted as well?
That is correct. So hand on hand or one-to-one, hand on hand or, physically manipulating, guiding of the limbs for a sport is now going to be acceptable after May 1st. So yes, you can actually provide some physical feedback onto your athletes for their coaching element.
Perfect. And the other question is, I know when it came to swimming, there was a limit to how many people per lane. Has that also been lifted as well?
That would be up to your facility. So we do not have any requirements for that. So whatever your facility says you can put in a lane is what you'll be using as your guideline.
Perfect. Thank you very much.
You're welcome. And that looks like that is it for the queue for questions. Excellent. These are really great questions. And thanks to some of your questions, I've just made some notes as to what some more information I want to include on that on the website after May 1st, because I do think as much as we can, it's going to be weird. It's going to be really weird getting back together and feeling comfortable standing next to somebody or racing in the lane next to somebody for our athletes. So and I've been saying this all along that it's 2 years that we've been in this COVID situation. This pandemic has been 2 years. It's going to take us probably 2 years to move out of it to that point where we feel comfortable being around people again. So, I think the biggest thing right now that we have to remember is, again, the motto during the pandemic was from Special Olympics was no judgment, only support. So let's continue that motto. Vaccinated, unvaccinated, masked, unmasked, whatever that looks like, we got to support everybody. We have to be supportive of, be good to your athletes, be good to yourself too. Don't be too hard on yourself either. So, but just, really, let's ease our way back in this and get back to competition, get back to having fun. And then, as we were talking about earlier, starting, in the winter time, we got to start looking at those provincial qualifiers and championships and so forth. So we've got a lot of things to move forward to, and we're slowly going to get there. So I promise you it's all on the table, and we are working really hard to make sure that it all happens for you.